All right. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, maybe good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Stefan Spijkers. I'm co-founder of PIMvendors.com, and today I'm joined by Raoul from KatanaPIM. But before we dive into the world of fashion and how a PIM system can help you navigate that world, let's quickly dive into some housekeeping and some background of PIMvendors.com. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Stefan Spijkers. I'm co-founder. I have a background in e-commerce. I've always worked on the intersection of IT and operations, so product data and getting that through systems into the open world. And today we advise companies independently on their product data processes and tools. So the whole architecture of processes, but also the IT systems that support that. For example, a PIM system, but also different AI tools, an iPaaS tool, and basically how to set up that flow from your PLM or ERP down the way to your PIM, where you enrich that product data to all your downstream channels, how to make that process as smooth and efficient as possible. That's where PIM Vendors comes into play and where we help you with a independent and solution agnostic solution. Regarding today, we have a recording made available for everyone. So if you are joining us a bit later, or if you have to leave us earlier, don't worry. We'll reach out to you with a recording and you can view that recording on our website or on our YouTube channel. Always give us a few days. So early next week, it should be made available and share it with you. You can always rewatch your favorite parts. And if you have any questions, please use the comment box. We'll try to weave in your questions or comments into the conversation, maybe highlight some things. We have a live demo coming up, so maybe we can highlight some parts of the tooling that you want to see. So just leave that in the comment box and we'll try to pick that up right away, as this is a live conversation. So better make use of that. Still, if you have questions you don't want to ask in a live conversation, that's also fine. You can reach out to Raoul or to me personally here on LinkedIn. I don't think that should be any problems for you to find our profile. So feel free to connect with us. Having said all that, maybe Raoul, could you quickly introduce yourself and maybe the tooling as well?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Stefan, also PIM Vendors for this invitation, which is always a lot of fun to do. Also very open for questions, which will make this more of a conversation between everybody I don't see behind their screens instead of a monologue on my side. Today, I just want to go more in depth about the challenge that we hear from a lot of fashion companies in managing their product content, also for different sales channels. And I'll get into my introduction, but if you're okay with that, Stefan, I will start sharing my screen, which will make my story a lot more fun with some visual slides there. So what we want to do, I want to take you onto the road on, hey, what could a end goal be for a fashion client getting your products online or into the stores, but also what are some of the challenges that you can face reaching that goal, and of course how PIM, like KatanaPIM, can help you, of course, mitigate and make it a little bit more efficient. What I'm not going to talk about is how to deal with product lifecycle management, as Stefan already mentioned, but also pricing strategies and inventory challenges. Because in our opinion, from KatanaPIM side, this is not something that you would like to manage inside of a PIM, but there's different toolings that you would use for that. If you have questions, of course, we have the conversation. Stefan also has a lot of information about this, but that's not my focus point for today. So, starting with myself, my name is Raoul Straathof, 40 years old, live in Leiden, and as Stefan, I have a background in e-commerce in the more broader sense of the word, saying I started picking basketball shoes for a basketball web shop and had a lot of different chairs I went to in the last couple of years, but now landed on the chair of product manager, which means I'm responsible together with our development team on making sure KatanaPIM fits the need of our clients, but for now, but also for the next 5 years. So that's how I'd like to look at the market and also how it develops with all the new toolings there. We are a Dutch PIM solution, or Dutch SaaS solution. KatanaPIM itself is about 5-6 years old, but the company itself, where it originated from, is over 20 years old, starting as a custom-built e-commerce agency, when in the time custom-built was still the way to go. But what we saw after doing that for a long time very successfully, we saw that one side, we saw SaaS solutions coming up really quick. But at the other side, we also saw like a lot of different online channels and a lot of more sales channels coming available for fashion, for other retailers and brands as well. So we shifted our attention. We developed 2 SaaS solutions. One of those became a marketplace integrator, which later became an independent company called Channel Engine. And the other one became KatanaPIM. And that's where, of course, we're focusing on today. KatanaPIM is, as I said, is a Dutch SaaS solution focusing on helping companies manage their product information. And we focus on the, I would say, mid-market to larger types of companies. And because we focus on these type of companies, we have a slogan that said easy to use, easy to integrate, and easy to implement. And that's also because we believe that we are always part of a bigger ecosystem for a client. So if you want to have a web shop, you need a CMS. If you have your ERP there, and you need to integrate with all those different solutions. And that's why we find it very important that it's easy there as well. And on the other hand, it's very easy for us to make sure it's easy to implement. So it has to be user-friendly, but also the learning curve of starting to work with KatanaPIM should be low. Also because we understand that the companies that we focus on, they need to have their resources available to actually do the work to sell their items. And of course, the easy to use is there because what we saw is a shift in the user profile of a PIM user, where in the past it was more technical, part of the IT team, making sure it integrates with all the solutions. And now it's more the marketer that has a product knowledge. So it also needs to be a little bit warmer. It needs to be a little bit more intuitive. And that's what we strive for. Now, the goals that we see a lot of clients that are coming to us have is, of course, either replatforming from an older solution, PIM solution, misusing ERP or web shop. But mostly it's about optimizing their operational processes to making sure it's a little bit more efficient. And in the end, of course, always increasing sales. And that can be extending on your catalog, but also making sure you're going cross-border, going to different channels and stuff like that. And last but not least, we are also, as we call it, industry agnostic. So KatanaPIM can be used for profession, for brands and for retailers, but also more industrial types of solutions. So we can be put in use for different types of businesses there. And just below, you see a couple logos of some of our fashion clients. So we have some experience. Yes.
Maybe a quick question, Raoul.
Yeah.
You mentioned the different customers that you serve. Do you see often that customers come to you without a PIM, like that this is actually their first time using a dedicated product information management solution?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially also the market that we service are a lot of times are coming from either misusing ERP or a web shop, or coming from Excel sheets scattered across their company, and then want to centralize it because they want to scale up over maybe having more translation options or going to different sales channels. So yes, definitely there. A lot of times it's the first time PIM used there. So what I want to start my story with is the end result. The end result is, of course, having one of your many SKUs online on a marketplace or a web shop like Zalando in this situation, and everything is there that you need to inform, inspire, and then also convince your potential client to buy your article or buy your SKU in this situation. So there's images, there's descriptions, there's a lot of stuff which may really make it easy for a client to make a decision. Hey, this is the item I want to buy. That's, of course, the end goal. But if you look a little closer to all that content that's on that page that every visitor expects to be there on a product page, you see there's a lot of different types of product content available there. So there's, of course, category, images, but videos, which is very important as well. You have descriptions, and then descriptions is the funny one because you can also tailor description based on the different channels that you're selling it on. And now with description, what you see a lot in the last couple of years is AI-generated content. So it should also be integrated with AI tools like, of course, ChatGPT, but other toolings like fossils. There's a title, of course, pricing, specifications, and also something that's very interesting is the digital product passport. Everybody's becoming more aware of this. It goes into effect officially by EU legislation in 2030. However, on 2030, you need to have your data sorted out over the past 3 years. So starting 2027, you need to have everything in place and ready to go there. Not going to go in depth on that today. However, you can contact, of course, Stefan or Chris from PIM Vendors. They have all the information, watch the videos online, and then you're ready to go. And now if you can scan the QR code later when you have the video, I think there's a small little offer we have there as well hidden. So, and this, having all these SKUs, the thing is that if you sell a shoe, you're probably not just going to sell that one shoe. It's probably part of a bigger family, which will make your catalog a lot bigger. So in this situation, if you have this running shoe, that running shoe comes in different colors, and those colors comes in different sizes. And each size, of course, you want to sell separately. If you want to manage all that content for over all those SKUs, it can be a lot of manual work to maintain it. So this is where a PIM can help you by working with we call it the product variant structure, going from the top level, a grandparent, to the parent, and then to the child level. Being the child level is the actual sellable product, so that's the red shoe size 42 in this situation. And what you can do, if you structure this in a certain way in this product variant tree, you can also structure where you put your content on which level. Meaning, if you want to be a little bit more efficient, the material of the shoe that doesn't change based on the size or based on the color. So what I want to do is I want to place the material, or at least where I manage the material, I want to put that on the grandparent level. And then having that set up, same thing for the image that doesn't change based on the size, but it will change based on the color. So I'll put my image, but also maybe the description and the title, I put that on the parent level. Now with the right solution, you work with product content, and then we call it inheritance, is where the content of the grandparent and the content of the parent inherits down all the way to the child. So now if I have for instance, my price on the grandparent level, it will inherit to the parent and then also inherits all the way down to child level, which makes it that I have a lot less manual work to maintain and be a little bit more efficient and focus my time more on optimizing my content for the eventual client instead of just doing the tedious day-to-day job of managing it. Next challenge, what we see, is you have all these different types of content, that different type that comes from different sources within your company, or even from, let's say, a manufacturer or a wholesaler if you're on the retail side. All those bits and pieces of content, they live over all your whole company with different responsibilities also on different persons. So this is where a PIM can help by just centralizing all that content in one solution. That's of course the first basic step. But the second step is you also want to make sure that there is a workflow, we call it a workflow manager, that's there in place to help structure the process in how you want to enrich a product. And then every single time you add a new product, then it just follows that workflow on an automatic level and hits the right colleague at the moment that they need to fill in the right content, ensuring that at the end the product is complete with all the content that is needed, and then it can be distributed to the different sales channels. So how we see it, and this is a screenshot of course on how we do it with KatanaPIM, you just create a step-by-step process. In that steps you can determine which fields you need to important for that certain step, and then you can assign a certain user or user role to that step as well, making sure they always have an up-to-date work list on the content that they need to work on. Also making it very easy just to keep an eye and track on how a product develops. And this is of course important, especially for fashion, because you work with different seasons, so there's a lot of new products coming in every 3 months, 6 months. So it's very important to keep track, making sure everything gets online as quick as possible. Final challenge I want to talk about is what we see now is that there are so many different sales channels available for each retailer or for each brand or a wholesaler. Going from online, like going for a web shop, but also all the different marketplaces. Going cross-border is a lot easier as well. But we still have a lot of retailers where we might have to deliver some of the content. And of course, the brick and mortar, so maybe the stores. Each sales channel, they all have their own requirements on what kind of information they would like. For instance, Amazon requires a couple extra USPs. It can be that your brick and mortar expects a certain stock update, which you cannot maybe deliver via your ERP. So there's a lot of different contents and requirements for the different sales channels. And this is also something that you can handle in a PIM, or in most PIMs, quite easy, especially also looking at different translations. So what I'm going to do now, I just want to show you a little bit on how KatanaPIM can look like on a day-to-day basis, filling out the different contents, how it works with the workflow. So closing in the story, how it might look when you are using a PIM. Please note that this is a non-released version of our application yet. So if you have any questions regarding that, I'm happy to inform you on that as well. And this is always the trick. All right, this looks like it's gonna work. All right, so when you're logging into KatanaPIM, first thing you do is you land on our dashboard, which just gives you a quick insight on what goes on in your PIM. So you see some quick statistics on the right side, and on the bottom some recently added and edited products. And you see an activity feed, just see which user changed which product at which point in time. The other thing that you also see is on the right side, top side, is like a multi-store filter that you have, just determining the assortments for the different sales channels. But more important, what you see is that we have a workflow also directly on the dashboard, which gives a up-to-date or a live update on the products that are not complete for a certain product. So as you see here on content level, which is my responsibility, I still have 83 products that are not complete yet. So by just clicking here, I'll just get a up-to-date work list right away for all the products that are not complete with my responsibility. So here you see the overview. You see it's different levels because I have to manage content on a child level, but also on a parent level. And that's based on how we set up the structure in KatanaPIM. And if I go from here and I click a product, I land on the product edit page. Again, this gives me just a short overview of what content is already filled for the product. So I, of course, see the images, I see some information. But what I also see on the side is a completion sidebar, which is connected to the workflow, which will tell me exactly for this product, you still need to add the main image and the price, which is, of course, is a demo environment, so it's not really up to date on that part. You also see here the variant tree we just talked about, because this is very important to understand. I have a grandparent, I have a parent, so in this situation I have the running shoe that comes in a different color, and under that color are the different sizes. And this is now important because this is also how we manage the inheritance of the content going from the grandparent to the child level. So looking at the content, of course, there's a lot of base fields. You see a title, short description, full description. You even have SEO fields if need be. And then you have a lot of fields that you still need to fill in. And then how we show the inheritance is showing it a little purple and like a dashes behind around it, showing this content is inherited from a parent or from a grandparent. Now, just for my workflow, I need to make sure I fill in the fields that I'm responsible for. So the SKU, the GTIN, maybe the manufacturer part number. Maybe I have to add a category, I have to add a brand, and from there I can just fill out the product based on the requirements I set up already up in front. Same thing for the specifications, because this is where it's tricky, because you have a lot of different specifications on a product, but at the same time it can be that you have, let's say, 20 or 40 attributes for a product, but multiple people have different responsibilities. So maybe it's a little bit on the marketeer who has to fit in some of the specification, maybe somebody from logistics has to fit in something. So this is how we differentiate, and we're working with, we call it specification groups, which is a group of certain specifications, and you can assign that to a colleague. So if I'm responsible here, I'll just click open the Zalando required attributes. And for Zalando, I need to fill in the color, the material, the size, of course, the price in this situation, but also the care instructions. So this makes it a lot easier for me just to make sure I'll just fill out the content that I'm responsible for. With, again, the idea is that everything is complete once it's done. So everybody gets the chance to validate, go through their work list, and making sure that the product actually gets online. Now the images. And this is always a question that we have a lot, but this is an open discussion that we hear a lot as well from other vendors. Managing images. So when is it managing images and when is a digital asset management tool a dumb solution? We really say we're not a dumb solution, and that's because we do not allow you the opportunity to really edit images inside the PIM, because then if you do that, there's a lot of more questions and a lot of more stuff that goes into that. And we feel like if you want to manage and edit your products, that's where a DOM solution comes into play a little bit more, because then you can manage your asset based on a high-res image, maybe some extra PDF or other assets that you have to manage videos on a product, and you want to do that in a centralized way. And this is why a DOM and a PIM can connect very easily with each other based on integrations. or plugins, making sure you feed the web images or the web optimized images inside your PIM, because a PIM is better suited to integrate all the product content, so that's the descriptions, but also the images, into your web shop, towards your marketplace integrator, or maybe even making a short Excel export and sending it to a retailer. So that's where we as Katana PIM see the divide. But at the same time, we do offer the functionalities to making sure that the distribution part and the management part is better handled. And we do that with what we call image groups. And within an image group, you can define different tiles. So these are, what you see here are the different tiles. And on each tile, you can put different labels. And of course, the labels reflect what kind of image we expect there, or at least that you can want to expect there. And now it's very easy for people working on the product content to making sure that I map the right image to the right tile. And now when I make an API integration or I just do an export, I also get the labels with the image. And now I can make my integration based on the label instead of the image description, which a lot of times is they use the image name. It's SKU_1, SKU_2. And that's very prone to all kinds of manual errors. And that's something that you definitely don't want, because the image is one of the strongest inspiring things that you have on a product when it goes to a live site. So this is why we found this is very important, helping you with the process, while at the same time allowing person content manager inside the PIM to understand directly what type of important image I'm still missing. So here I see just the overview of all my products. But now going in depth, answering also the question that Stefan asked at the beginning is, or maybe it was outside of the meeting, Stefan, I'm not quite sure anymore. Because you have multiple channels, the requirements of images over those channels can be different. That can be from dimensions, that can be from file types, so let's say JPEG or WebP, what you see a lot. And this is also what this can also help you, Katana PIM and the image group can help you also structure this, because now I can say, hey, this is a Shopify image based on these dimensions, or this image has to go to Zalando. Because if I go to Zalando, maybe I want a lifestyle image as my first image, and the second image I show, that's the actual cutout. But Zalando has different requirements, and they say, no, I want the cutout image first, and the lifestyle image is going to go on whatever, number 4, for instance. I map it on the right tile, I can set up my automation, and you just limit all the manual errors there. I think this just makes it a little bit easier to contain and also to get an overview. And of course here also inheritance of images is also very important, just to making sure everything is a little bit more efficient. A little bit water.
Maybe just a question, Raoul, because we did discuss this before we went live.
Yeah.
Like, how much can you expect of a DAM in a PIM, right? And these Venn diagrams always overlap, because there's a PIM, but there's also what do you do in ERP, what do you do in DAM, what do you do in your MDM tool, what do you do in your syndication tool. I think it's very interesting that you choose this commerce-focused, I would say syndication-focused approach. It makes sense coming from the background that Katana comes from. It was always a bit of a disappointment for me personally how narrowly defined a PIM is, right? So in principle, it's almost only the enrichment part. Yes, there's some onboarding, but it usually is a bit bare bones. And yes, there is some syndication, but that is maybe even more bare bones than the onboarding for most PIMs. I think the retail syndication publication focus, or the outbound output part focus of Katana PIM is different and sets you apart from the competition, different in a way that is better, right? So more advanced and more fine-grained and more in tune what you would brand or wholesaler or even a retailer that is publishing to multiple channels.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I think there's a good addition. I think the difficulty, of determining, hey, when is it a different solution and when do you feel like it's part of it? I think it's just also vision on the product. I know there's a lot of PIMs that say they have a DAM integrated. I think it's just the vision or interpretation of what you feel like, what is a DAM and what is a PIM. For us as KatanaPIM, when the image becomes centralized in managing it inside the solution instead of the product, for us then it becomes a DAM solution. But also what's important for us is, because we focus on mid-market to larger types of companies, one of the things that we have to be very aware of is our pricing model. So we want to make sure that we focus all our capacity within our company based on the tool that we want to offer, which limits our pricing model, our monthly fees that we have, and also giving the clients that we have the opportunity to start using a PIM, optimizing their operations. And when then the next phase is, okay, now we need to find a solution for a DAM solution, they can find the DAM solution with the same mindset. So now they can build out their ecosystem and then pay only for what they actually want to use or what they grow into, instead of going to a more enterprise level, which is awesome and very good. But at the same time, you pay a lot of costs upfront for tools or functionalities that you might not use in the end. And it's just a different mindset. It's a focus, what you have. And we focus really on being part of a bigger ecosystem, understanding that we have to be aware of budgets and also scalability on our client side. And that's also why we say no to certain functionalities. But at the same time, what we do is we try to partner with a lot of, tools that surround product information that have the same mindset. So we do partner with DAM solutions. We do partner with CMS solutions, also with composers or EPAs or whatever name they give themselves, helping our clients, hey, if you start using KatanaPIM, that's perfect. You outgrow a certain area, let's say images. Hey, we have this solution for you. You want to work with Digital Product Passport? There's a tool for that. So that's how we view the business, and that's how we want to help our clients as well.
That makes a lot of sense, to find the right partners, and there's some sort of ecosystem around Katana. I mean, another way where you are different from other vendors is you do most implementations, or maybe all implementations yourselves, or you let the customer do most of the implementations, which makes sense for the target audience, instead of having implementation partners that implement the tooling, who also will then create all these integrations with your different output channels, right? And that's a profit center for these implementation agencies to implement the Amazon connection, or to implement the Bol.com connection, or to implement whatever connection you want to have integrated, because it's a lot of customization and custom work that they can, of course, and will, of course, build to you, instead of, well, it's never Legos or as easy as Legos with IT systems, but instead of maybe the Katana approach, which is a bit more the ecosystem approach, where you find the best of breed, can I say that, in 2025, the best of breed solution for each domain.
Yes, exactly. Now, I think that's one of the things that we feel. We feel like it should be almost like a plug and play. And of course, it's never really a plug and play, but it's more about configurations instead of building. And as I said, we are an out-of-the-box solution. So with KatanaPIM, once you start with it, you always get the full applications. So we do not hide functionalities. But at the same time, it's also not that you can build KatanaPIM over your own operations, but you're putting KatanaPIM in there and you're using the functionalities to support your operations. I think that's a little different there. However, that's also how we limit the amount of hours that you need for onboarding as well, because it's pretty straightforward, out of the box, ready to implement at the same time. However, one of the challenges, and we always say that, installing KatanaPIM, that's not the difficult part. The out-of-the-box integrations, that's not the difficult part. The most important part, and then I'll just go back, because this was almost my last screen, and I'll go back to my view just to support it. This is the most important part, is understanding the data model of your product, especially when you're working in fashion. Understanding the data model, hey, I work with product variants. These are the types of content that I need on this level. Setting this up in a structure where it's then easy to be implemented over your whole catalog, that's the difficult part. And then also determining, hey, I want to use this within KatanaPIM, but also have being aware of the limitations of the software surrounding it. A lot of ERP solutions are not supporting product variants. They're just working with, let's say, simple products, simple SKU products, which is something you have to take in consideration when you set up your automations and set up your structure. And this building the data model, this is, of course, where we also have an ecosystem of all kinds of partners that can help building. Of course, PIM vendors can help there.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. That's definitely something that you have to call PIM vendors for. But there's knowledge that a lot of times is missing from actual companies that come towards us, because it's very specific knowledge that you have to have. And it's very difficult to get that in-house. And then a lot of times what we see is there's a partner, there's an agency that can help you set up the data model, because that will determine your success in the end to getting your products live in a short amount of time.
No, I fully agree. I mean, this is also the domain of the implementation agency. So yes, they have a profit center in connecting you to different downstream channels, of course.
Yep.
They also do the work for it, but they also help you with specifically this, understanding your business and your industry and helping you set up with the right data model, which is something we can help with, of course, but that's the reason you need the expertise. I have not seen many customers do this. No, I have not seen customers do this right when they have never done this before. It is something you think is easy, but there's so many layers of complexity. I have never seen someone do this right from the first. I have myself not done this right from the first get-go. So, yeah, beware.
Yeah, definitely be aware. And this just takes time. So implementing a PIM, if you hear the hours that an agency or a consultant has to spend on helping you with this project, just double those hours by 2 on the amount of hours that you would need internally. Because all the information, all the knowledge that you have to bring to the table has to come from your teams. So this is always don't never underestimate PIM implementation. Definitely something important there. Yeah, so from managing your assets, and also it's a mindset that there are PIM solutions that have great DAM functionalities inside their solution as well, which is awesome. I think it's just a choice between different flavors on applications, and also taking budgets in consideration there as well. Just to finalize the story within this lightning demo, we talked about translations. That's also something that a PIM can really help you with, because of course you want to translate everything, and it can be through a translation agency. Of course you have AI generated translations, which is something that you always want to read once it's translated, making sure there are no weird translations there. But what we also see there is doing it manually just within the company, which is also fine. It's a lot of work, but sometimes it's the way to go. And what we try to do is also helping with the functionalities on not doing translations double. So for instance, if you map a color black to a product, you only want to make sure that the color black is translated to Dutch and Italian that once, and every single time I map it to another product color black, then the translations are already set. So this just make the fundamental tedious work, you remove it, and you just focus on the really important content that you really want to have your eye on. You want to optimize it based on target audience, based on the sales channel. Is it B2B? Is it B2C? Stuff like that. So that's something important. The other thing that we do with KatanaPIM, but I think it can also help a lot, is looking at the different sales channels. So that can be, this product can go to so it can go to my web shop and it cannot go to a marketplace, or it can go to this retailer, but not that retailer. And the same thing goes also based on country. You can work with country limitations based on deals that you have with retailers or maybe with the manufacturer, and you can limit that this product can only, in this situation, only go to England, Germany, or the UK, I have to say, sorry, to the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands, but I cannot sell it in France, for instance. So also assortment management is something that we offer also within KatanaPIM, because it also makes it a little bit more efficient on what kind of content you do want to fill in and what kind of content you don't want to fill in on a product. So just making sure you're aware of that as well. And all this should lead, and that's of course the closing argument, and this is the familiar slide, If you have this structured in place and you have your teams aligned in the workflow, you can just start working on it, and then you can make sure that for every sales channel that you have the most up-to-date and targeted content available, of course, to convince and inspire your client to actually buy the product. And then it doesn't matter if it's on Zalando, on your own web shop, via a retailer, but then you have everything under control. And then, of course, the final slide.
All right. Let me quickly check
Yes.
if there are any questions. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Drop them in the comment box on the right-hand side. If you want to see some highlights or review some highlights from Raoul's demo or his presentation, let me know. Maybe I have a question regarding sort of this channel management and how you make that efficient, because that is something I see so often taking so much time and actually limiting customers when it comes to adding more top line, right? Adding more revenue to their business when they want to add more channels, but they cannot because their solution, whether that is e-commerce or ERP or whatever they're using for the syndication, is not giving them, is limiting them because there's all kinds of manual steps or manual exports or all those things.
Yep.
How do you see that with your customers and sort of the difference between using their existing solutions, be that Excel or be that their current solution architecture versus their Katana-enabled architecture?
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that we just want to make sure that you have to be aware of what are the requirements on the channels that you want to sell on. So that can be from some certain specifications. Of course, translations are very important. We talked about digital assets. Just making sure that's going to be part of your data model, and then that's also being part of your workflow on your day-to-day routine of making sure the content is correct. And it also depends a little bit on what your idea is on your scalability. So what we see a lot of our clients are starting to use a PIM because they want to scale up on multiple marketplaces, right? There's a whole world open now. All the borders are basically disappearing because there's all those marketplaces where you can sell your products. The logistics are now also at a point where it's easier to work with logistic partners that can also help with distributing your products over the border to different countries as well. So that's what we see a lot on the scalability side. And then it's just also what is the next phase in your ecosystem? Because as KatanaPIM, we do not want to maintain all the connections to all marketplaces, because we see that's a different business model, of course, due to our sister company, Channel Engine. We are fully aware how much work it is to maintaining all the connections to all the different marketplaces. So in this situation, we advise our client, hey, this is a moment where you have to look to the next phase and maybe go to a marketplace integrator or using another syndication tool to distributing your product content to all those solutions, using automations in that tool to making that work not tedious and a lot of work, but just, again, starting from a structure, then setting the structure up, and then you can start automating it. And then that's where the success comes from.
That was actually my follow-up question, because I always had this, again, the narrow definition of PIM, right? And the fact that you can, only manage product data, but if you dive just a bit deeper, then you notice how complex product data can be, and translations and sizes and variations. And yeah, that's something you have to experience for yourself, that complexity. But that you can only manage product data in a PIM. And if you want to sell on the marketplace, that you also need to take into account that you have this order flow coming back. I was curious how your customers solve it, but you advise them basically to either look at direct integrations with their warehouse partners or fulfillment partners. And if you really want to scale up on multiple international marketplaces, to then work with a syndicator or marketplace connector.
Yeah, because what we see a lot is if you can sell on one marketplace, you probably can sell on 20. And that sounds maybe very easy to say, but if you can sell cross-border, depending on your limitation, of course, then it's easier to go, because if you have set up your infrastructure, put it like that, if you have your infrastructure on the IT level ready to sell cross-border, going to marketplaces. You also have your logistics infrastructure ready there. Then you can just scale up to so many different channels. And then it's just adding the right requirements in your workflow, put it like that. And then there's the scalability. But then, of course, it starts with understanding the channel that you want to sell on, what are the requirements, but also then looking at, I think that's very important, the logistics side of that order flow, that, or at least the delivery flow that's there. But then again, it all comes back to your ecosystem, your IT infrastructure, having a scalable solution there, that where you find, hey, I need to scale up, or I outgrown my current solution, where it's more like a plug and play and you don't have to destroy your ecosystem or have a huge migration from an all-in-one solution towards the next phase. But then you can just adjust on the go without disrupting your whole company.
Maybe one more question regarding that architectural setup. So what we see with clients is that they're in this digital transformation, right? They're replacing their ERP, and then they notice that the flat SKUs are not going to serve them for the next 5 years, or that their next version of Microsoft Dynamics actually says like, hey, we only have 5 attributes. So pushing all that complexity, all that product data complexity out of the ERP, which I think is a good and valid point.
Yeah.
You manage all that complexity in your PIM, or you start managing all that complexity in your PIM. That's sort of the first phase of that maturity scale. And then the next phase is what you say is adding all these different output channels. When do you see your customers moving from the direct connections, so directly connecting their web shop, or directly connecting Amazon, or directly connecting an app, to this intermediate layer with these iPaaS systems, or you manage them, the composers, I think.
Composers like the Alumios, the Order Chiefs, the XX cores,
Exactly. So when do you see your customers moving from that simple one-to-one connection to the integrating with an iPaaS integration platform as a service or composer service?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, after they talk to us, that's maybe a horrible answer to give. But it's a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. So it starts with, okay, we having an ERP solution and we have a web shop. Okay, we have an integration build, because a lot of times an ERP and a web shop on basic levels, they integrate with each other. Okay, I want to sell on a marketplace. Okay, that's okay. Contact the marketplace, you get an account, and then in that marketplace, in your account, you can upload a CSV or an XML. Okay, but then you see, okay, it's a lot of work to do it. And then, okay, maybe a second marketplace, but it's a lot of manual work. And it's also because a lot of time knowledge is missing from a company to set up a right scalable solution. So then they notice, or they hear something, okay, I want to be more efficient. The product content takes a lot of time. Okay, I'm going to go and look for a PIM. So now they're talking to you guys from PIM vendors, and they say, okay, if you want to start work with a PIM, then these are the different PIM vendors that you can talk to. But then also you can think about, hey, what does your ecosystem look like? Okay, I have my ERP webshop. Okay, where does the product come to life? Do I start in my ERP, or do I start in my PIM, for instance? And do I feed the other solutions from there? Because then you start talking about automations. And when you start talking about automations, then you flow into the next phase. And then you say, okay, here's the plugin for this. But at the same time, if you want to do a best of breed solution, a lot of times a composer there as well. And you can introduce them into the next phase of automating it. But it all comes down to understanding, starting from structure, and then starting from automations, and then scaling as soon as they grow, instead of just putting a big all-in-one monster of a solution right in front of them, which costs a lot of time to implement, of course. And then we have a lot of people coming back from that at the moment.
I mean, it's exactly as you see it. You don't know what you don't know. And it's also that there's this evolution going on where, for example, PIM, 10 years ago, PIM was either unknown, or it was so much of an enterprise tooling from a cost and complexity perspective, and even a user interface perspective, that no one, even if you knew about PIM, you wouldn't want to implement it for, or couldn't even afford to implement it for your mid-market business. And now I think even smaller scale-ups can effectively and efficiently implement a PIM solution. And I think the same is true for these integrators, where it used to be this really enterprise-focused field, and you needed to have either an existing enterprise service bus. I mean, who remembers those, right? But wanted to bring that to the cloud, and you got into the iPaaS space, but then the expensive enterprise-focused iPaaS space. But now you have these tools like you mentioned it already, AutoChief, that are available even for the mid-market. So it is something you can actually solve with solutions that are fit for your market.
Yeah, I think the one thing to add, Stefan, if I may, is there's almost no way around it, because the development of the toolings currently in the market, they demand for companies to be flexible and scalable with the tooling they're using at the moment, because a PIM solution now looks like what we have. That's what we think. But it doesn't say that in about 5 years it does look like this as well, because what we saw already with AI and the comeuppance of that real quick, the demand on what a PIM can do with AI in mind, with what you can do with image creation instead of doing full-on photo shoots for different models with your clothing. Maybe you just put in one model, one picture there, and you just let AI generate the images over your model itself. The need of what a PIM is will change dramatically over the next couple years. So you need adaptability. And that's why you see the best of breed or SaaS solutions, because SaaS solutions have the opportunity to keep going along with the changes of the market, what they demand. And that's the biggest difference in what you see more with open source and the all-in-one solutions, is they don't have the capacity to look at the newest solutions and make quick adjustments. So that's why, of course, that's our vision to it. But you have to be able to adjust. And if you outgrow a solution, you have to be quickly to say, okay, outgrown, that's not too bad. I'll just move on to the next without it disrupting my whole ecosystem and, of course, then the whole company as well.
Oh, super interesting. I mean, we can talk about this for hours. And maybe we should schedule another one. Yeah. Well, we have been talking for hours on multiple occasions. I don't see any questions from the audience right now, but I do know that they will probably be able to find you or me on LinkedIn if that is necessary. I would say let's wrap this up for now, Raoul. And I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the audience for joining us today. And I hope to see everyone soon. And thanks so much, Raoul. See you next time.